The following content is a narrated fictional account.
Thomas Wilson thought he'd found paradise when he moved into his dream home, a peaceful sanctuary with a sparkling backyard pool, but his quiet life was shattered when an entitled neighbor crossed the line, turning Thomas's property into a battleground of pride, trespass, and shocking revenge. What began as a simple dispute would change everything. Thomas Wilson had always dreamed of owning a home where he could enjoy both tranquility and a touch of luxury. That dream finally came true when he purchased a charming two-story house nestled in the scenic suburbs of Oregon, with its sprawling backyard, complete with a glistening pool surrounded by lush greenery. The property felt like a personal oasis. To Thomas, this was more than just a house. It was the promise of a fresh start, a place to create memories with his 16-year-old son, Dylan. A widower and skilled auto mechanic, Thomas was known for his hands-on approach to life. When he wasn't fixing cars in their spacious garage, he and Dylan would bond over restoring classic vehicles or lounging by the pool. The weekends often brought the pair together for long conversations, laughter, and dreams of restoring an old convertible sitting dormant in the corner of the garage. For Thomas, these moments were the highlights of his new life. Despite the joys of settling into his new home, fate had thrown a wrench into Thomas's plans. Just a week earlier, while installing a satellite dish on the roof, he lost his balance on the ladder and fell awkwardly. The result was a fractured leg that left him in a cast and hobbling around on crutches for the next few months. The injury slowed him down significantly, but it didn't dampen his determination to enjoy his new sanctuary. The neighborhood seemed idyllic at first glance. Wide streets lined with tall trees, well-kept homes with immaculate lawns, and a sense of quiet that felt almost surreal compared to the bustling city he and Dylan had left behind. Most of the neighbors were polite, exchanging pleasantries when they passed by, though Thomas hadn't had a chance to meet everyone yet. Among these neighbors was Donovan Reynolds, a stout man in his 50s with an air of self-importance who lived just a few houses down. Thomas had heard little about Donovan, apart from whispers that he was the self-appointed enforcer of unwritten neighborhood rules. On a sunny Saturday morning, as Thomas sipped his coffee and admired the serenity of his backyard, he felt a renewed sense of gratitude for his home. He planned to spend the day catching up on minor chores around the house, tasks he could manage even with his limited mobility. Dylan was in the garage tinkering with an engine, the sound of tools clinking faintly in the background. For a moment, life felt perfect, but perfection is fleeting. Later that afternoon, Thomas stepped outside to check on Dylan, only to freeze in disbelief at the scene unfolding by the pool. Two figures, Donovan and a younger man who appeared to be his son, had made themselves at home in Thomas's backyard. Donovan reclined on a lounge chair as though he were at a private resort, while his son sat at the edge of the pool, dipping his feet in the water. There was no sign of hesitation or acknowledgement that they were trespassing. They had brought their own towels, a cooler of drinks, and a palpable sense of entitlement. For a moment, Thomas stood rooted in place, caught between shock and outrage. How could anyone be so brazen? This was his property, his refuge, and yet these strangers were treating it like a public amenity. With his crutches under his arms, Thomas took a deep breath and began making his way toward them, his mind racing with questions and a growing sense of indignation. What began as a quiet Saturday was about to spiral into a confrontation that would change the dynamic of the neighborhood forever. As Thomas approached the intruders, his crutches thudding softly against the paved path, he tried to contain his rising anger. Donovan remained blissfully unaware of Thomas's presence, lying back on the lounge chair, with his sunglasses perched lazily on his nose. The younger man, likely his son, sat casually with his legs dangling in the pool, swirling the water with his feet. It wasn't until Thomas's shadow blocked the sunlight that Donovan finally stirred, blinking up at him with mild annoyance. "Oh, hello," Donovan said, his tone so casual it bordered on dismissive. He sat up slightly, adjusting his sunglasses. "Nice of you to join us. Didn't think you'd be using the pool today." Thomas blinked, unable to comprehend the sheer audacity of the man. "Excuse me," he began, his voice tight. "What exactly are you doing on my property?" Donovan raised an eyebrow, his expression a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Relax, pal. We're just cooling off. My son and I thought we'd enjoy a little dip. Beautiful pool you've got here." "That's not the point," Thomas snapped, gripping his crutches tightly. "You're trespassing. This is my property, and you have no right to be here." Donovan leaned back in the chair, feigning confusion. "Trespassing? Come on now. The previous owners never had an issue with us using the pool. We've been coming here for years. It's practically a neighborhood tradition." Thomas stared at him in disbelief. "The previous owners don't live here anymore. I do, and I didn't invite you here." Donovan's amused demeanor shifted to irritation. "Well, aren't you just full of yourself?" he said, standing up and brushing imaginary dust from his shorts. "Let me tell you something, sir. This pool has always been a shared resource for the neighborhood. If you're going to be the kind of person who hoards it all for yourself, maybe this isn't the right place for you." Thomas's temper boiled over. "Shared resource? This is private property and you're trespassing. I want you and your son off my property now, or I'll call the police." At this, Donovan let out a derisive laugh. "Go ahead, call them. Do you think they're going to waste their time because someone decided to take a dip in your precious pool?" He crossed his arms and smirked. "That's the problem with you new folks. No sense of community." Infuriated, Thomas turned on his crutches and began hobbling back toward the house. He saw Dylan standing in the garage doorway, his expression a mix of anger and concern. "Dad, what's going on?" Dylan asked as Thomas approached. "Those two are trespassing in our backyard," Thomas said through gritted teeth. "I told them to leave, but they refused. I'm calling the police." Dylan's jaw tightened. "They can't just do that. Let me handle this." "No," Thomas said firmly, lowering himself onto a chair in the kitchen as he dialed the non-emergency police line. "People like that won't listen to reason, and I don't want you getting hurt. Let the police deal with it." While they waited, Thomas explained the situation to Dylan, who paced back and forth, fuming. The injustice of the situation was almost too much to bear, but Dylan nodded, understanding his father's cautious approach. When the police arrived, Donovan and his son were still lounging by the pool, as though nothing had happened. Donovan laughed out loud when he saw the officers, casually gathering his things. "Looks like someone took it a bit too seriously," he said, shaking his head in mock disbelief. One of the officers approached Donovan and calmly explained the situation. "Sir, this is private property. The homeowner has the right to ask you to leave. Failure to comply could result in charges." Donovan scoffed, trying to argue that he had an implied right to use the pool based on past arrangements with the previous owners. However, the officer firmly explained that such rights did not carry over to new ownership. When Donovan continued to argue, the officer warned him that he could be fined for trespassing if he didn't cooperate. Grumbling, Donovan finally relented, gathering his belongings and leaving with his son. Before departing, he turned to Thomas and sneered, "You think this is over? We'll see who gets the last laugh." Thomas ignored the comment, relieved that the situation had been diffused without further escalation. He filed a formal complaint with the officers, who assured him that any future incidents would be treated seriously. As the patrol car drove away, Thomas glanced at Dylan, who clenched his fists in frustration. "Don't worry, Dad," Dylan said with quiet resolve. "We'll handle this. No one messes with our family." Thomas nodded, though unease settled over him. Something told him Donovan wasn't done. Weeks passed since the trespassing incident, and while Thomas tried to move on, the uneasy feeling never left him. Donovan's parting words echoed in his mind, a lingering warning that the situation was far from resolved. True to form, Donovan didn't let things rest. Rumors started circulating in the neighborhood, mutterings that Thomas was a selfish newcomer, unwilling to embrace the spirit of community. Thomas heard it first from a neighbor across the street, an older woman named Mrs. Harper, who stopped him one afternoon to share what she'd overheard. "Donovan's been talking," she said gently. "He's saying you're difficult, calls you a loner, a troublemaker." Thomas shrugged, feigning indifference. "Let him talk. I don't care what he thinks." Mrs. Harper frowned, clearly unconvinced. "Just be careful. Donovan doesn't take well to being told no." Thomas thanked her and went on his way, but her words left a bitter taste. He tried not to dwell on Donovan's provocations. The pool had been cleaned, the trespass issue addressed, and his leg was healing ahead of schedule. Life was moving forward, until one fateful night. It was nearly midnight when Dylan burst into Thomas's room, his voice urgent. "Dad, There's someone by the pool. I think it's them." Thomas sat up instantly, the adrenaline coursing through him. "What? Did you call the police?" "Already did," Dylan replied, holding up his phone. "But you need to see this." Groaning, Thomas swung his legs over the bed and grabbed his baseball bat for security. He followed Dylan to the living room, where his son pointed toward the window overlooking the backyard. Through the dim glow of the pool lights, Thomas spotted two hooded figures by the water. They were pouring something from large containers into the pool. Yellow liquid. It didn't take long for the smell of paint to waft through the air. "They're dumping paint in the pool," Dylan whispered, his voice tinged with anger. He held up his phone, its screen glowing as he recorded the scene. "I'm getting it all." Thomas's heart pounded as he weighed his options. He couldn't let them destroy his property, but confronting them head-on carried risks, especially with his leg still not fully healed. "Stay here and keep recording," Thomas instructed. "I'll go around the side and cut them off. Don't come outside unless I say so." Dylan hesitated but nodded, gripping his phone tightly. Thomas slipped out the front door and crept along the side of the house, using the shadows for cover. His grip tightened on the bat as he approached the intruders. The closer he got, the clearer their identities became. It was Donovan and his son, both completely engrossed in their vandalism. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Thomas's voice rang out, startling them. Donovan turned, his face lit by the pool lights, the trademark smirk already forming. "Oh, look, it's the pool police," he sneered. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little color?" "You're trespassing again," Thomas growled, his bat raised slightly, "and vandalizing my property. The police are on their way." "You're caught, Donovan. This time there's no talking your way out of it." Donovan's son, wide-eyed, looked uncertain, but Donovan remained unfazed. "Oh, spare me the drama," he spat, dropping the empty container. "What are you going to do, Thomas? Limp over here and hit me with that stick? Face it, you're a joke." Thomas narrowed his eyes. "The only joke here is you. You've been caught on camera. Dylan's filming everything." Donovan's smug expression faltered as he glanced toward the house and spotted Dylan on the porch, phone in hand. "Get that kid," Donovan barked to his son. Before Thomas could react, Donovan lunged toward him, swinging a metal rod he had picked up from the ground. Thomas barely dodged the first swing, stumbling as his injured leg gave way. He swung his bat in return, landing a glancing blow on Donovan's shoulder, but it wasn't enough to stop him. Donovan snarled and hurled the rod, striking Thomas in the shin of his injured leg. Pain shot through him as he collapsed, the bat slipping from his grasp. Donovan loomed over him, eyes gleaming with triumph. "This is what you get for messing with me," Donovan hissed, raising the bat as if to strike. Suddenly, a blur of motion appeared from the side. Dylan, wielding a wrench from the garage, slammed into Donovan, knocking him off balance. The bat clattered to the ground as Dylan shoved Donovan with all his strength, sending him stumbling backward into the pool. Donovan's son, startled, turned to run but tripped on the edge of a lounge chair. Dylan didn't hesitate, pinning him down just as police sirens wailed in the distance. Thomas, still sprawled on the ground, watched in disbelief as his son stood over the intruders, breathing heavily but victorious. Relief washed over him as flashing lights illuminated the yard, signaling the end of the chaos. The police had arrived. As the red and blue lights flashed across the backyard, Thomas propped himself up, wincing at the sharp pain radiating from his leg. The officers moved quickly, taking in the scene. Donovan struggling to climb out of the pool, drenched in yellow paint, his son lying pinned on the ground under Dylan's firm grip, and the wreckage of overturned containers and smeared paint surrounding the pool. The first officer on the scene helped Thomas to his feet. "Are you okay, sir?" Thomas nodded, though his face was pale with pain. "I'll manage. But these two—" He gestured toward Donovan and his son. "They trespassed, vandalized my property, and attacked me." Donovan, dripping paint and seething with anger, finally emerged from the pool. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "He attacked us. We were just—" "Save it." The second officer cut him off, stepping forward with a pair of handcuffs. "We've got enough evidence to sort this out at the station." "Sir," he added, turning to Dylan, "you said you have video." "Yes, everything," Dylan said, standing tall despite the tension in his voice. He handed over his phone, showing the recording of Donovan and his son dumping paint into the pool, along with their confrontation. The officer reviewed the footage, his expression hardening. "This is more than enough. Donovan Reynolds, you're under arrest for trespassing, vandalism, and assault." He motioned for the other officer to cuff Donovan's son as well. "You can't do this," Donovan bellowed, his bravado crumbling. "This is all a misunderstanding. The kid provoked us." But the officers weren't buying it. As Donovan and his son were led away, Donovan shot Thomas a glare filled with venom. "This isn't over," he spat, though his words lacked their usual conviction. As the police car pulled away, the adrenaline that had kept Thomas upright finally began to fade. Dylan rushed to his father's side, helping him sit on one of the intact lounge chairs. "Dad, are you okay? I shouldn't have let you go out there alone." Thomas shook his head, giving his son a weak smile. "You did exactly what you should have, Dylan. You called the police, you filmed everything, and you had my back when I needed you most. I couldn't be prouder." In the days that followed, the fallout from the incident was swift. Donovan and his son were formally charged with multiple crimes, including trespassing, property damage, and assault. When the case went to court, the footage Dylan had recorded proved damning, leaving little room for Donovan to defend his actions. The judge ruled decisively in Thomas's favor, ordering Donovan to pay restitution for the damage to the pool and medical costs for Thomas's injured leg. More importantly, Donovan was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while his son received 4 years for his role in the crime. With Donovan out of the picture, the neighborhood felt like a different place. The whispers and rumors faded, replaced by words of support and camaraderie from neighbors who had quietly admired Thomas's resolve. Many had stories of their own run-ins with Donovan's overbearing behavior, and they thanked Thomas and Dylan for putting an end to it. Though the memory of the incident lingered, Thomas found peace in knowing that justice had been served. He looked at Dylan one evening, sitting by the repaired pool, and realized they had weathered the storm together. In that moment, their bond felt unbreakable. The weeks following Donovan's sentencing marked the beginning of a new chapter for Thomas and Dylan. With their neighbors' toxic influence gone, the neighborhood seemed to breathe easier. Several neighbors who had previously avoided Donovan out of fear or frustration began reaching out to Thomas, offering their support and gratitude. One evening, Mrs. Harper knocked on the door with a plate of cookies. "You did us all a favor," she said, smiling warmly. "Donovan caused more problems than you know. It's about time someone stood up to him." Word of Thomas's victory spread quickly, earning him newfound respect in the community. Many neighbors who had kept their distance before began stopping by for friendly chats, and some even offered to help repair the damage to his backyard. Dylan, too, became something of a local hero among the neighborhood kids, who admired his bravery during the confrontation. With the settlement money from the court case, Thomas restored his pool to its former glory. He even took it a step further, upgrading the backyard with new landscaping, outdoor lights, and a small fire pit. The repairs and additions turned the space into the true sanctuary Thomas had always envisioned, a place of peace and relaxation. Dylan, inspired by the experience, took on more responsibility around the house, often surprising his father with thoughtful gestures. One day, he set up the patio with string lights and grilled burgers for an impromptu celebration. As they sat by the pool, enjoying the quiet evening, Thomas realized how much stronger their bond had become through the ordeal. The neighborhood, once wary of Donovan's domineering presence, transformed into a more welcoming and united community. Block parties were organized, neighbors exchanged favors, and a sense of trust began to flourish. For Thomas, the true victory wasn't just reclaiming his property. It was the sense of belonging that had finally taken root. Sitting by the fire pit on a crisp autumn evening, Thomas gazed at his backyard with a deep sense of contentment. The once disrupted tranquility had been fully restored, and his pool sparkled under the glow of newly installed garden lights. Dylan lounged nearby, flipping through a magazine on classic cars, while the distant hum of friendly neighbors filled the air. For Thomas, this was what home was meant to be, a sanctuary where he and his son could thrive, free from unnecessary conflict. The ordeal with Donovan had been grueling, but it had also brought unexpected rewards. The settlement allowed Thomas to enhance his home, turning it into the retreat he dreamed of. More importantly, it solidified his bond with Dylan. They had faced the challenges together, and it had strengthened their mutual respect and trust. Reflecting on the past months, Thomas couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. He had stood his ground, upheld his rights, and in doing so, helped the neighborhood rid itself of a toxic presence. The days of whispered rumors and passive-aggressive comments were gone, replaced by smiles and camaraderie among neighbors who had rallied around him. Thomas was also proud of Dylan, whose quick thinking and bravery during the confrontation had played a critical role in bringing justice to their doorstep. His son's maturity in handling the situation was a testament to the values Thomas had tried to instill over the years. As they finished their evening and prepared to head inside, Dylan asked, "Dad, do you ever regret moving here?" Thomas smiled, his gaze sweeping over the serene yard. "Not for a second. This is our home, Dylan. We earned this peace." With a final look at the glowing pool, now a symbol of resilience and hard-won freedom, Thomas turned off the lights and stepped inside, ready to embrace the future.